Welcome back to another episode from David Tale's Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from today? We'd love to know. Now get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's dive into today's gripping story. Most people need an alarm clock to wake up early. Me? I haven't needed one in over 40 years. My eyes just open at 5 a.m. Like clockwork. No buzzers, no chimes, just habit. It's like my body knows before I do. It's built into my bones now. My wife, Teresa, used to tease me about it all. The time. She'd smile and say, "Ethan, even in the afterlife, you'll wake up at 5 to check if the world's still spinning." She knew me too well. It's been 3 years now since she passed. 3 long, quiet years of waking up alone. The bed feels too big without her, and sometimes, in that hazy space between dreaming and waking, I swear I can hear her soft breathing beside me. I can almost feel the warmth of her body close to mine, like she's just turned over in her sleep. But when I reach out, the air is cold, and the silence reminds me she's not there. It's just a memory, a trick of the heart. I live alone in a small cottage on the edge of New Brethren. Nothing fancy. 1 floor, 3 bedrooms, a modest kitchen, and a cozy little living room where I spend most of my evenings. It's quiet, but I like it that way. My neighbors? Mostly folks like me, retired, gray-haired, and up early. To them, I'm just old Ethan Hawkins, another pensioner with a slow walk and a weathered face. They don't know I own one of the most talked about restaurants in town, and I prefer it that way. I start every morning the same. Wash my face, shave off the night, and brew a strong cup of black coffee. No milk, no sugar, just as Teresa used to make it for me. Breakfast, 2 eggs, a piece of toast, that's all I need. Sure, I could eat like a king. I could have caviar and champagne on the table every morning if I wanted to. But that's not me. Money was never the goal. It's always just been a tool, a way to give my family a good life. But now, there's not much family left. My son Noah lives his own busy life. We don't see each other often, only on holidays. Or if he needs something. And Paige, his wife, she's made it clear from day one that I'm not exactly her favorite person. She looks at me like I'm dead weight. Some sad old man who's bound to ask for a loan or move into their guest room one day. If only she knew the truth. At 7 a.m., I grab my keys and head out the door. My old '88 Toyota coughs a little. Before starting, it's stubborn like its owner. Sure, I could trade it in for something sleek and shiny, but this car still runs. And more importantly, it blends in. To most people, I'm just another elderly man driving an old car. But the truth? I'm driving to the heart of the city, to a place that means the world to me. 15 years ago, I took a chance and bought a rundown building in the middle of town. It was risky. I used nearly all our savings to open a restaurant. Teresa was scared, but she stood beside me. She believed in my dream, even when I doubted myself. The early days were rough. Endless bills, sleepless nights, and the constant fear we might fail. But we didn't. We pushed through every setback, every slow night. And then came Elliot. I always arrive at the restaurant an hour before it opens. The kitchen is already alive with noise, pans clattering, burners roaring, spices in the air. Elliot Quint, my head chef, is already there, bent over the counter, working his magic. "Good morning," I call out, stepping into the kitchen. He looks up, his face worn like leather but bright with a grin. "Boss, right on time. Try this," he says, offering a spoon. I take a sniff. "What's this one?" "Lobster cream soup, with saffron and coconut milk." I taste it. The flavor is bold, rich, smooth, with just the right hint of spice. It's fantastic, I say honestly. "This'll be a favorite for sure." Elliot is 52, but life's been hard on him. He looks older than his years. I met him when he was down and out. No job, no family, just a man barely holding on. He was digging through the trash behind the restaurant one night. I didn't shoo him away. I brought him inside and gave him dinner. Over that meal, he told me his story, how he once worked in high-end kitchens, even Michelin-starred ones, until addiction destroyed everything. There was something about him, maybe the way he talked about his past, maybe the sadness in his eyes, or maybe I saw a spark that hadn't burned out yet. "Want a job?" I asked him. He looked stunned. "Me? Look at me. I'm done. I see a man who's lost his way, not one who's lost everything," I told him. He started with the dishes, quiet, focused. Slowly, he made his way into the kitchen. 6 months later, I let go of our old chef, we never saw eye to eye, and gave Elliot the reins. People thought I was crazy, but Elliot proved them all wrong. He's been sober for 8 years now, and he's the reason the Blue Oyster is what it is today. The seafood delivery's running late, he tells me, snapping me back to the present. "We'll manage," I say. "We've got enough to last through lunch." I walk the floor, making sure everything's spotless. Rebecca, our hostess, is setting menus. She's young, maybe 20, and working part-time while studying. "Good morning, Mr. Hawkins," she says brightly. "Morning, Rebecca. How'd your exams go?" "I aced them," she beams. "I knew you would. You've got a good head on your shoulders. It's those little moments that mean the most to me. Seeing people grow, being part of their lives, even in a small way. To them, I'm not just a boss. I'm someone who listens, who cares." At 8 a.m., we unlock the doors. To Paige, I salute back. It's amazing how a man can rise so high with so few talents. Elliot laughs. He's never met Paige, but he's heard enough about her over the years of our friendship. "Maybe she's a good professional," he says. "In her field." Maybe I agree without much. Conviction. Either way, it's going to be an interesting evening tomorrow. We finish our whizzies and I head home. The old Toyota is still reluctant to start. On the way, I think about how my life has turned out. About Teresa, about Noah, about my grandson, about the restaurant, about what might have been if I'd made different choices years ago. At home, I turn on the old record player and put on a Frank Sinatra record. Teresa and I used to love that music. Sometimes it thinks she's still here, sitting in her favorite chair with a book and the kettle boiling in the kitchen. But the house is empty. Only old photographs on the walls remind me of the past. The day before dinner at her son's house was hectic. The dishwasher broke down in the restaurant, and the technician promised to arrive only by evening. We had to hire extra dishwashers immediately. Then there were problems with the wine supplier. They brought the wrong kind. By lunchtime, I had a headache, so I closed myself in my office trying to get some rest. A knock on the door snapped me out of my half-slumber. "Come in," I mumbled. Elliot peeked into the office with a steaming cup in his hand. "Bro tea, peppermint, and molasses. It's good for headaches." I nodded gratefully, accepting the cup. The herbal scent enveloped me, bringing me some relief. "You're going to see your son today, aren't you?" Elliot asked, sitting down on the edge of the table. "Yeah, at 7. What are you going to tell them?" He shrugged. Same thing I usually did. I'd congratulate Paige on her promotion, ask how Caleb was doing in school, hear about their plans for the future. Same as always. Elliot shook his head. "Ethan, we've been over this. Maybe it's time to stop this show. Tell them the truth." I took a sip of tea. The mint pleasantly chilled my palate. To do what? So Paige would start fawning over me? For Noah to start asking for money for a new house or car? No, it's fine the way it is. Is it? Elliot looked at me questioningly. "Your son thinks you're a loser. His wife openly despises you. Is that okay?" His words struck a nerve. Of course it's not okay, but the alternative seemed worse. "You don't understand," I said quietly. "I've seen how money changes people. As soon as your relatives find out you have a fortune, you stop being a person and become an ATM machine. I don't want that." Elliot sighed. "Okay, Your life is your rules. But think about this. You're robbing your son and grandson of the opportunity to be proud of you. They could rejoice in your successes instead of looking at you with pity. His words made me think. Perhaps he was right about something, but the memories were too fresh and the fear of repeating past mistakes too strong. I'll think about it, I said to close the subject. Elliot took the hint and stood up. Okay, I won't push it. I have to go to the kitchen. I'm testing a new salad. Have some tea and rest. When he left, I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. My thoughts took me back 10 years to when Noah had first brought Paige to our house. Teresa was still alive. We cooked a celebratory dinner, bought good wine. Noah had called the day before and said he wanted us to meet his girlfriend. I remember how excited Teresa was, putting things in order, preparing the best dishes, even buying a new dress. Paige turned out to be Atoll, skinny blonde with sharp facial features and a cold stare. She entered our house with the look of an inspector appraising a property. Her gaze slid over the furniture, the paintings, the curtains, and I could almost physically feel her disappointment. Very nice, she said with a strange smile, accepting a glass of wine from Teresa. Over dinner, she talked mostly about herself. Her job at the insurance company, her career plans, the traveling she had done. When Teresa asked her about her family, Paige answered briefly. My father is a surgeon. My mother is a literature professor. We're not very close. Later, when they left, Teresa said to me, I don't like that girl. Cold, calculating, and she looks at us like we're something unpleasant. I tried to reassure my wife. Give her a chance. Maybe she was just nervous. But Teresa was right. The longer Noah dated Paige, the more obvious her attitude toward us became. She always found a reason not to show up to family dinners. When she did show up, she was distant and condescending. After Teresa died, it got worse. Paige thought I should sell the house and move into a nursing home so I wouldn't be a burden. She kept telling Noah that he shouldn't waste his time on an old man who had no future anyway. The wedding was modest. Noah and Paige insisted on it. Why spend money on a lavish celebration when you can put it aside for the future? Paige said at the time. I presented them with a check for $5,000. Almost all of my official savings. Paige didn't even say thank you, just tossed it in. I hope you didn't go broke over that. When Caleb was born, I was over the moon. A grandson, a continuation of the Hawkins family. I wanted to be there for him, to help him, to watch him grow up. But Paige skillfully kept me out of the boy's life. Caleb has allergies, so you better not come. Caleb's very busy. Music lessons, sports, tutoring. We're going away for the weekend. There was always a reason I couldn't see my grandson. One day I couldn't stand it and told Noah everything I thought about his wife. It was the first serious fight we'd had in years. She's manipulating you, I shouted. She's turning you against me. Can't you see that? Stop it. Noah was furious. You're only saying that because she's more successful than you. You've always been jealous of other people's success. His words hurt more than a slap in the face. Jealous? Me? The man who built a successful business from scratch. A man who had provided his family with a wealthy life. But Noah didn't know that. To him, I was just an old man who could barely make ends meet in his pension. After that fight, our relationship became even more strained. We saw each other infrequently, talked formally. Only Caleb seemed genuinely excited to see me. In him, I saw the continuation of our family, the hope that all was not lost. The headache slowly receded. I finished my tea and went back to work. The day flew by and it was time to close the restaurant and go home to get ready for dinner. Elliot caught me at the exit. Listen, Ethan, he said, lowering his voice. I've thought of something. Why don't you invite them here? To the restaurant? Surprise them? I shook my head. No, Elliot, not now. I'm not ready. When will you be ready? When your grandson grows up and looks down on you too. That's my business, I said sharply, and I'll decide when and what I tell my family. Elliot held up his hands in a conciliatory gesture. Okay, I'm sorry. It just hurts me to see the way you've been treated. I've softened. I know you want what's best for you, but trust me, sometimes the truth just makes it harder. At home, I took a shower and started getting ready. What to wear? I don't usually think about these things, but today I wanted to look decent for some reason. I chose a navy blue jacket that Teresa had given me for my 60th birthday, a white shirt and gray pants. I looked at myself in the mirror, a gray-haired old man with a wrinkled face and sad eyes. That's how my family sees me. That's how the world sees me, except for the staff at the Blue Clam. I pulled a small box from the closet with a gift for Paige, a gold bracelet with sapphires. Expensive, but not flashy. The kind a thrifty retiree who'd been saving for months could afford. For Caleb, I bought a set of science experiments. The boy is into chemistry. On the way to my son's house, I felt a strange unease. Usually these visits were a challenge for me, but today, something was off. Maybe Elliot's words had hit me deeper than I thought. Noah and Paige's house was in a respectable neighborhood in New Britain. A 2-story house with a manicured lawn and a 2-car garage. Not luxurious, but spacious and modern enough. I parked my old Toyota next to Paige's brand new Lexus and felt a familiar prick of irritation. Why should I be ashamed of my car? Why should I make excuses for being poor? I took the gifts and headed for the front door. Before I could even ring the bell, the door swung open and Caleb appeared on the doorstep. "Grandpa," he exclaimed happily, throwing himself around my neck. I hugged him, feeling my heart fill with warmth. This boy is the only pure and sincere connection I have left with my family. "Hey, buddy." I patted him on the head. "How are you doing?" "I'm doing great. I won the school math Olympiad and I got into the science club." "Good for you. I always said you were the smartest kid in town." Caleb glowed with praise. In his eyes, I saw the same spark of curiosity that Noah had when he was a kid. "Look what I brought you." I handed him a box of kit. He quickly unwrapped the package and gasped in delight. Wow, a young chemist kit. "Thank you, Grandpa." "You're welcome, champ. Just don't blow up the house, okay?" Paige's voice came from deep inside the house. "Caleb, who's there?" "It's Grandpa," shouted the boy and tugged my hand. "Come on, Mommy made a turkey." In the living room, Paige was setting glasses on. The table, when she saw me, she smiled strangely. "Ethan, how nice of you to come." Her voice sounded falsely welcoming. I noticed that she looked at my outfit appraisingly. "Thank you for inviting me," I replied. "And congratulations on your promotion." "Yes, it was inevitable," she shrugged nonchalantly, as if to say, "It's only natural for talented people like me." I handed her the box with the bracelet. A small gift. "I hope you like it." She took the box with slight surprise. I guess she hadn't expected a gift from me. "Thank you," she said discreetly. It wasn't worth the expense. Noah came out of the kitchen with a bottle of wine. "Daddy, glad you could make it." He came over and gave me a hug. The hug was formal with no real warmth. "I wouldn't have missed it," I replied. "A promotion is a big deal." We sat down at the table. Noah opened the wine. Paige brought appetizers. Caleb climbed into the chair next to me and started talking about his adventures at school. And we have a new science teacher, and he showed us how a centrifuge works and how to isolate DNA from a banana. And Caleb, Paige interrupted him. "Don't talk so much. Grandpa's not interested." "Actually, he's very interested," I countered. "Go on, Caleb. What else did you do in class?" Paige pursed her lips but didn't say anything. Caleb continued his story with enthusiasm, and I listened, savoring every word. This boy was so bright, so alive. the exact opposite of his mother. Noah poured the wine and raised his glass to Paige to her promotion and her new position as regional manager. We clinked glasses. Paige looked pleased. It was her night, her triumph. "I have 30 people under me now," she said, sipping her wine, "and my salary is up 40%. "That's wonderful," I replied sincerely. Regardless of my attitude toward Paige, I respected professional success. "Yeah." She cast a quick glance at my jacket. Not everyone can boast such accomplishments. I let the stiletto slip past my ears. In my years with Paige, I'd learned not to react to her barbs. "What are your new responsibilities?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation going. She began to talk about her job with apparent pleasure, sales strategies, expansion plans, new clients. I nodded and asked questions in the right places, although I had little interest in the insurance business. Noah brought a turkey, perfectly roasted with herbs and lemon. I absent-mindedly evaluated it with a professional eye. Not bad, though Elliot would have done a better job. "It looks delicious," I said. "As Paige has outdone herself," Noah said proudly, looking at his wife with adoration. "Oh, it wasn't hard," she smiled at him. "Just followed the recipe." We started eating. The turkey was a little dry, but I didn't comment on that. "So, Ethan," Paige turned to me, "how are you doing? Still working part-time at the library?" That was another barb. I never worked at the library. She knew that, but she just wanted to emphasize that she didn't even remember what I did. "No," I answered calmly. "I'm retired." "Oh, yes, of course," she smiled with fake sympathy. "It must be hard to make ends meet on one pension." Noah threw his wife a warning glance, but she ignored it. "I'm getting by," I said briefly. "Dad knows how to save money," Noah interceded. "He's always been frugal." "Yeah, I can see that." Paige glanced at my jacket. That jacket must be 20 years old. Actually, it was 10 years old, and it was worth more than Paige's entire closet. But I didn't say anything. Caleb, sensing the tension, tried to change the subject. "Grandpa, will you go to the science fair with me on Saturday? I'll be showing my project." I opened my mouth to answer, but Paige beat me to it. "Caleb, Grandpa's too busy. He's got a lot of, things to do." She said the last word with such sarcasm that even Noah cringed. "Actually," I said firmly, "I'd love to go if you want, Caleb." The boy brightened. "Really? That's great. My renewable energy project. I made a model of a wind turbine. That sounds awesome." I smiled at him. "I'll be there." Paige didn't look pleased, but she didn't argue in front of her son. Dinner continued. The conversation jumped from topic to topic. Noah's job at the architecture firm, Noah's vacation plans, Caleb's schoolwork. Paige never missed an opportunity to spike me. She hinted at my modest lifestyle, bemoaned the plight of the retired, and talked about how important it was to pursue a career when you were young so you wouldn't fall by the wayside. Noah was mostly silent, only occasionally trying to steer the conversation into a more neutral direction. I could see in his eyes that he was uncomfortable, but he didn't dare confront his wife openly. When we were done with dessert, a store-bought cake that was a little too sweet for my taste, Paige leaned back in her chair and announced, "We have an idea. Let's all go to a restaurant together tomorrow. Celebrate my promotion for real." I tensed up. They didn't usually invite me to restaurants. Paige didn't think I could afford the expense. "That's a good idea," I agreed cautiously. "Which restaurant did you choose?" "I heard there's a great place downtown called the Blue Oyster," Paige said. "They say it has great food." I almost choked. The Blue Oyster? My restaurant? It was some kind of cosmic irony. "I heard of it," I said, trying to keep my voice normal. "They say it's not cheap," Paige continued, "but with my new salary, we can afford it. And don't worry, Ethan, you're welcome." Her tone was condescending, like she was doing me a huge favor. "Thank you," I said, avoiding looking her in the eye. "That's very nice of you. It's settled then." Noah looked pleased that the evening was ending on a positive note. "Tomorrow night at 7 at the Blue Clam." Caleb clapped his hands together. "Yay, we're going to a real restaurant. You're going to love it, buddy." I patted him on the head, trying to hide my excitement. The Blue Oyster. Out of all the restaurants in town, they picked mine. Was it an accident, or did fate decide to teach me a lesson? Soon I started packing to go home. Paige volunteered to walk me to the door, an unusual courtesy for her. "Thanks for the bracelet," she said when we were alone in the hallway. "It's very nice." She held the box in her hands but didn't open it in front of me. "I'm glad you like it," I replied. "It must have taken you a long time to save up for it." The patronizing tone in her voice returned. "I'm handling my finances," I said neutrally. "Of course you are." She patted my shoulder like a child. "Just know that if you ever need help, Noah Hand, I are always there for you. After all, you are his father." "Thanks, but I'm fine." "Of course you are," she smiled. That special smile she saved for talking to me. A mixture of condescension and pity. "Just remember that there's no shame in admitting that you need help." I nodded silently, feeling the anger boiling up inside. How much longer could I put up with this attitude? How much longer was I going to let her talk to me like I was a clueless child or a helpless old man? "See you tomorrow," I said, heading for the door. "See you tomorrow," she said. "Don't forget to wear something decent. The Blue Oyster isn't the diner on the corner." I remained silent and walked out into the chill of the night. I spent the whole day, before going to the restaurant tonight, on pins and needles. I called Elliot in the morning to warn him about the unusual guests. "Are you kidding?" He laughed when I told him about the invitation. They chose the Blue Oyster. Out of all the restaurants in town? Exactly. I sighed heavily. Some kind of cosmic irony. Or a sign of fate. His voice turned serious. Maybe it was time to reveal the cards. I was silent for a moment, pondering his words. "Really? Maybe this is a chance to end the lies." "I don't know, Elliot. Let's see how tonight goes. Whatever you say, boss. Either way, I'll make your daughter-in-law a special dinner." The day dragged agonizingly slow. Toward 16 Haas, I drove home. Instead of a worn sweater and jeans, I wore a dark gray suit from a famous Italian designer. Completed the image with a silk tie and gold cufflinks, a gift from Teresa on our last anniversary. I arrived at the Blue Oyster at exactly 19 Woe. I decided to leave my old Toyota at home in Calacab. Noah, Paige, and Caleb were already waiting out front. "Grandpa," Caleb exclaimed, rushing toward me, "you look like a movie spy." I laughed and hugged my grandson. I was just getting dressed up for a special occasion. Paige gave me an appraising look. "Not bad, Ethan. I didn't expect you to have such decent stuff." We entered the restaurant. Rebecca was greeting the guests at the entrance. When she saw me, she smiled broadly, but immediately caught my warning look and professionally switched to hostess mode. Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes, under the name Hawkins," Noah answered. 4-4. She led us to the best table in the room by the window overlooking Asmal Garden with lights. "The best table?" Paige said with satisfaction. "I guess they know how to serve." Caleb looked around the restaurant with delight. "It's so beautiful." "Look, Dad, there's an aquarium with real fish." Paige studied the menu with a slight grimace. "Pretty expensive," she said with a hint. "I hope you won't order the most expensive dishes, Ethan. We of course invite you, but still." Michael, one of the most experienced employees of the restaurant, came to the table. When he saw me, he froze for a moment, but quickly pulled himself together. Paige ordered champagne and went straight to talking about her plans. "You know, this promotion opens up new opportunities for us. I think it's time for us to think about moving." "Moving?" Noah interjected. "Where to?" "To the West End, of course." "It's Got nice houses, better schools, better society. I'm not sure we can afford it right now, Noah said cautiously. With my new salary and your income, we can, Paige said. We just need to get our priorities straight. I like the house we have now, Noah said, and Caleb won't have to change schools. The West End has better schools, Paige countered. Caleb deserves the best education possible. But I have friends there, Caleb said quietly. You'll find new ones, Paige cut him off. More suitable ones. After ordering the entree, Paige returned to talking about money. If you manage your finances well, you can accomplish a lot, she said admonishingly. The problem with most people is that they don't know how to budget. For example, some people work all their lives, but when they get old, they have neither savings nor a decent pension. So, they have to live modestly. Not everyone has the opportunity to save, Noah said softly. Let's not talk about sad things. I'm just saying that it's important to think about the future, Paige persisted. So that you don't end up in the position of some people, she gave me a quick glance. What situation, Paige? I asked her directly. Well, you know, she made a vague gesture with her hand. When you have to make every cent count, deny yourself everything. It's sad. You think I deny myself everything? No, she smiled falsely. I'm sure you've learned to adapt. What do you mean by success, Paige? I asked calmly. Well, obviously financial well-being, career advancement, social status, she said, as if she were explaining something to a child. The ability to provide a decent standard of living for myself and my family. And you think I couldn't achieve it? Listen, Ethan, she leaned across the table to me. There is no shame in admitting your limitations. You did what you could, but let's be honest. You didn't achieve great heights, and that's okay. Not everyone can be a winner. Paige, please, Noah mumbled. What? She turned to him. I'm telling it like it is. Your father is a good man, but let's face it, he's a loser. Lives in an old house, drives a junk car, wears secondhand clothes. If it wasn't for our help, he wouldn't even... Your help? I interrupted, not believing my ears. When have you ever helped me? Well, we take you out to dinners, to parties. Paige looked genuinely surprised by my reaction. We pay for your entertainment like tonight. You don't think you can afford dinner at a place like this, do you? At that moment, the appetizers arrived, and the maître, Victor, came to our table. I apologize for the intrusion, he said with a slight bow. But the chef has learned that we have special guests tonight, and would like to personally welcome Mr. Hawkins's family. Paige blinked in surprise. Mr. Hawkins's family? Sheasked. You have us confused with someone else. We're just visitors. Victor looked confused. He looked at me for support. I think there's been a misunderstanding, interjected. Victor, this is really my family. My son Noah, his wife Paige, and my grandson Caleb. Then everything is correct, sir, Victor said with relief. The chef will be here in a minute. What's going on? Paige finally asked. Why does the maître know your name? And why does the chef want to see us? You see, Paige, I began slowly. I know the staff at this restaurant. Quite familiar. You've been here before? She asked incredulously. But it's an expensive place. At that moment, Elliot came out of the kitchen. Ethan, he exclaimed, approaching. What a nice surprise. He extended his hand to me and I stood up to shake it. It's good to see you, Elliot, I said with a smile. Let me introduce you to my family. This is my son, Noah, his wife, Paige, and my grandson, Caleb. Excuse me, but how do... You know my father-in-law? Paige asked. Elliot threw me a questioning look. I gave him a subtle nod, giving him permission to speak. How could I not know Ethan Hawkins? Elliot laughed. Thaman, who gave me a second chance at life, who believed in me when no one else did, who made me chef at the best restaurant in town. Paige looked like she'd been slapped in the face. Noah was staring at me wide-eyed. Dad, what's going on? He asked hoarsely. I own the Blue Oyster, I said simply. I've owned this restaurant for 15 years. Caleb clapped his hands together. Wow, Grandpa, this is your restaurant. This is so cool. Noah looked stunned. But how? Why didn't you ever tell us? Paige opened and closed her mouth like a beached fish. Was this some kind of joke? She finally squeezed out. A prank? Elliot put his hand on my shoulder. I assure you, ma'am, this is no joke. Ethan Hawkins is the owner of the Blue Oyster, one of New Britain's most successful restaurants. I've worked for him for 8 years, and I can tell you he's the best boss I've ever had. Paige looked at me with an expression like she'd seen a ghost. But you live in that old house and you drive a junk car dressing like a loser. I finished for her like a pauper, like a man who knows his place and doesn't pretend to be anything more. Elliot, sensing the tension, tactfully stepped back. I'll stay out of your way. I'll arrange for the finest dishes to be served on the house, of course. Why? Noah finally asked. Why did you keep this from us? Because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for my money, I answered honestly. And apparently I was right in my fears. Paige finally came to her senses. It's not fair, she said, raising her voice. You've been lying to us all these years, pretending to be poor, making us feel sorry for you. Pity? I grinned bitterly. Is that what you felt for me, Paige? Pity. Not respect, not love, not gratitude, but pity. That's not what I meant. She started to pull back. No, that's exactly what I meant. I looked her straight in the eye. All these years you've treated me with contempt. You've treated me like a burden, a loser, a second-ass citizen. And just now, right here, you called me a beggar. Noah looked shocked. Paige, did you really say that? No, I mean, not really. She frantically tried to justify herself. I was just saying that it's important to plan your finances so that you don't get into a difficult situation. Ethan got it all wrong. I got it absolutely right, I said firmly. And not just today. For the last 10 years, you've systematically humiliated me, Paige, thinking I wasn't good enough for your family. You've alienated my son and my grandson from me. And all this time I've kept quiet because I didn't want to cause trouble. But today, you crossed the line. Noah looked confused, shifting his gaze from me to his wife. Dad, I didn't know. He started. Of course you didn't know, I interrupted him. Because you preferred not to notice. Turned a blind eye to the way your wife was treating your father. But today you heard it all for yourself. Caleb, feeling the tension, squirmed in his chair. Dad, Mom, Grandpa, please don't fight, he asked quietly. His voice sobered me. I took a deep breath and tried to speak more calmly. You're right, Caleb. There's no need to ruin the evening. Let's just have dinner. It turned to Paige. And don't worry about the bill, Paige. Tonight's my treat. After all, we're celebrating your promotion. Paige looked like she'd been punched. Her face reened, her eyes filled with tears, either from resentment or anger. You set this whole thing up, she hissed. You brought us here on purpose to humiliate me. No, Paige. I shook my head. You chose this restaurant. Sometimes fate has a peculiar sense of humor. Michael came to the table again with the main courses. A plate appeared in front of me with an exquisitely decorated dish that wasn't on the menu. The chef wanted me to tell you that this is a new dish he created especially for you. Michael said if you like it, he'll add it to the menu as Ethan's triumph. There was an awkward silence at the table. Noah mechanically cut his steak without looking up. Paige sat without touching her lobster. Only Caleb munched on his burger with gusto, occasionally casting curious glances at the adults. You know, I said finally, turning to Paige, all these years I've put up with your neglect, your ridicule, your attempts to keep your son and grandson away from me. I kept quiet because I didn't want to put Noah in a difficult position. But today, you've gone too far. I don't know what you mean. Paige pretended to be surprised. I've always treated you with respect. Really? I raised an eyebrow. Beggar, loser, man who knows his place. That's respect. Constant reminders of how poor and pathetic I am is respect. Noah looked shocked. Paige, did you really say that to my father? No, she exclaimed. I mean, I might have said something like that, but not literally, and certainly not with malice. You said those words less than an hour ago, I reminded her. Right, at this table, before you found out I owned the restaurant. Paige looked cornered. Okay, she said finally. Maybe I was a little harsh, but you have to admit, Ethan, it's your own fault. Why hide your success? Why pretend to be poor? It's not normal. I didn't pretend, I answered, calmly. I was just living the life I was comfortable with. I didn't want to show off. I didn't want to have too many luxuries, and I wanted my family to love me for who I was, not for my bank account. Did it work? Paige asked Riley. Apparently not. I looked her straight in the eye. Because, Paige, you've never seen me as a person. Just a wallet empty or full. The rest of dinner passed in tense silence. Caleb, sensing the atmosphere, quieted down and quickly finished his burgers. Paige barely touched her lobster, though she'd recently ordered the most expensive dish on the menu with enthusiasm. Noah chewed, his steak mechanically, avoiding looking at both my wife and me. When we left the restaurant, Paige suddenly took me under her arm, a gesture she'd never done before. Ethan, I'm so impressed. Her voice turned honey. Why haven't you ever told us? About your business? It's amazing. I gently released my hand. I'm glad you like the restaurant, Paige. She didn't detect the coldness in my tone. I did. I loved it. The atmosphere, the service, and the food is divine. Your chef is a genius. Yeah, Elliot's very talented. I agreed. Caleb tugged on my sleeve. Grandpa, can I see the kitchen sometime? I want to see how all these delicious things are made. Sure, buddy. I smiled at my grandson. Come by anytime, and I'll give you a tour. That's a great idea, Paige said. We could come to your house for lunch every Sunday. A family tradition. I looked at her in disbelief. Just yesterday, she thought I was a burden, and today she was suggesting a family tradition. We'll see, I answered evasively. Noah was silent the whole way. When we reached their car, he finally spoke. Dad, we need to talk alone. Can I come by your place tomorrow? Sure, I nodded. Be there at lunchtime. Paige jumped in. I'll come too. We'll take Caleb too. No, Noah said firmly. You need to talk to my dad face to face. Paige looked like she'd been punched. She opened her mouth to object, but Noah stopped her with a look. It's not up for discussion, Paige. You're staying home with Caleb. I couldn't remember the last time I'd seen my son speak so firmly to his wife. We said our goodbyes. I hailed a cab and drove home, digesting the events of the evening. Things had not gone at all as I had expected. The truth had come out of the blue, and now I had to deal with the consequences. In the morning, Paige called, me for the first time in all the years we'd known each other. Ethan, I wanted to apologize for yesterday. Her voice sounded unusually soft. Maybe I was a little harsh, but you have to understand. I was shocked. I understand, I answered neutrally. Noah is very upset, she continued. He thinks you haven't trusted us all these years. I've tried to explain to him that you must have had your reasons, which I'll discuss with him today. I wasn't about to get into details with Paige. Sure. She was quiet. You know, I always felt like there was something special about you, some kind of inner strength. I could see where it came from. I almost laughed. Does she really expect me to believe this sudden change? Thanks for calling, Paige, I said, but I have to get to the restaurant. Oh, sure, I won't keep you. Maybe we could have dinner together next week. I'd like to get to know your business better. We'll see, I answered and hung up. Elliot was waiting for me at the restaurant. He looked excited. How did it go? What happened after our conversation? How did your sister-in-law react? I told him about the tense dinner and Paige's sudden transformation. Not surprising, Elliot said with a snicker. When you find out that the penniless old man is actually the owner of a successful business, a lot of people change their attitudes. That's why I kept it a secret, I sighed. I didn't want to be treated differently because of the money. So, what now? Elliot asked. Are you going to fix things with your family? I wondered. Really? What now? The truth is out. There's no turning back. I don't know. Noah's coming over tonight. We'll talk. And with Paige, I doubt we'll ever have a normal relationship. The day at the restaurant went on as usual, though the staff looked at me curiously. Apparently, the news of last night's incident had spread. At about 3, I drove home to get ready to talk to my son. Noah arrived at 5 sharp. He looked exhausted, as if he hadn't slept all night. Come on in. I invited him into the living room. You want some coffee or something stronger? Whis, if you have it, he said, sinking into a chair. I poured us both a glass and sat down across from my son. So he began, taking a sip of whiskey. Tell me everything from the beginning, and I did. About how 15 years ago, Teresa and I decided to invest all our savings in a small restaurant downtown. The first few difficult years when we were barely making ends meet. How things gradually picked up, especially after Elliot joined us. How after Teresa died, the restaurant became more than just a business. It became a way for me to keep in touch with her. But why did you keep it from us? Noah asked when I was done. Why did you live in an old house, drive a wreck, pretend you could barely make ends meet? I wasn't pretending, I countered. I was just living the life I was comfortable with. I didn't need a big house. Why would a lonely old man need extra rooms? The car suited me, reliable, familiar. And as for secrecy, I paused, choosing my words. Remember Uncle Robert? Noah frowned. Dad's brother? Vaguely. He died when I was little. That's right. Robert was a successful businessman, owned a chain of stores. When things got tough, suddenly all his relatives were his best friends. Everyone wanted to borrow money, get their errant son a job, invest in his business. And when he went bankrupt, they all disappeared. Didn't even show up for the funeral. I've had a whiskey. I've seen how money changes the way people relate to each other, how it distorts everything. And when our restaurant started turning a profit, I decided I didn't want it to affect our relationship. I wanted you to love me ASA, Father, not as a source of funding. Noah was silent for a long time, staring into his glass. I understand your logic, he said finally, but you didn't trust me. Did you think I'd treat you differently if I knew you were successful? This isn't about you, I sighed. The circumstances after Mom died, you were so consumed with your new life, your career. Then Paige came along and you became more and more distant. I didn't want to interfere or cause problems. Instead, I let Paige treat you like a heck couldn't finish the sentence, like a poor old man I finished for him. Yeah, maybe it was stupid, but I thought it was for the best, that if I told the truth, it would only complicate things. So what now? Noah asked, finishing his whiskey. Now that the truth has come out. I don't know, I answered honestly. It's up to you on Paige on how you decide to handle your relationship with me from here on out. Noah set the empty glass on the table. Paige is very upset, he said. She feels humiliated. She says you set this whole thing up on purpose to put her in her place. That's not true. I shook my head. I didn't plan the expose. It just happened. She chose the blue oyster on her own. I know, Noah nodded. But she can't accept it. I think it's hard for her to admit that. She's been wrong about you all these years. Do you? I asked, looking my son in the eye. What do you think? Noah paused, gathering his thoughts. I'm angry at you for hiding the truth, and at the same time I'm ashamed to admit it. But I'm mad at Paige for the way she treated you and at myself for letting it happen. He ran his hand through. His hair, a gesture he'd adopted from me. I feel torn apart. I don't know which side to take. You don't have to choose sides, I said softly. Paige is your wife, the mother of your son. I'm your father. We're both part of your life. But you don't get along. Noah grinned bitterly. And now, after yesterday, I'm not sure that will ever change. We talked for a few more hours. Noah told me that Paige had been crying and angry all night trying to justify her behavior. That Caleb is thrilled that this grandfather owns a restaurant and has already told all his friends. Thaddy himself didn't know what to think or how to act. When Noah left, I felt strangely devastated. The conversation was frank, but it didn't bring relief. We told each other the truth, but it didn't solve the problem. Now we all had to live with that truth and somehow build relationships anew. The next day, I went to the restaurant earlier than usual. I wanted to get my mind off of yesterday's conversation to immerse myself in my usual work. Elliot was already in the kitchen preparing something flavorful. How did the conversation with your son go? He asked when I came in to say hello. Difficult, I said, sitting down in the high chair by the desk. We talked it out, but I'm not sure it's going to make a difference. Elliot nodded, stirring the sauce. Give him time. The kid needs to digest all this. It's not every day you find out your father's a secret millionaire. I'm not a millionaire, I grumbled. Technically a millionaire, Elliot grinned. The restaurant's worth several million, plus your investments and savings. So yeah, you're a millionaire, albeit a modest one. I brushed it off. It's not about money. It's about trust. Noah thinks I didn't trust him, so I hid the truth. And he's right in part. What about the daughter-in-law? Elliot asked, adding spices to the sauce. Has she declared war on you? Or has she decided to be your best friend? She's trying to pretend she's always respected me. I chuckled. She even called yesterday apologizing, offering to have dinner with me, said she'd always felt something special about me. Elliot chuckled. Classic. Let me guess. Now she's going to shower you with compliments and invite you to all the family events. I guess so. I smiled. Wryly. But it won't be for long. Paige isn't one to pretend for long. Sooner or later, her real attitude would show through again. Elliot finished the sauce and began chopping vegetables for the next course. You know, I've been thinking. He paused as if hesitating whether to continue. About what? About the future. About what would happen to the restaurant in 5-10 years? I looked at him closely. Do you have any thoughts on that? Elliot put the knife aside and turned to me. I've always dreamed of having my own restaurant, he said quietly. Even before, before everything went downhill, and now working here, seeing how things work, that dream came back. I felt something tighten in my chest. Is Elliot really going to leave? Do you want to open your own place? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Someday, he shrugged. But those are just dreams. I know it takes a lot of money, connections, business management experience. I only have a talent for cooking, and that's thanks to you. Don't minimize your merits, I objected. Your talent was always there. I just helped you believe in yourself again. Elliot went back to chopping vegetables. Anyway, those are distant plans. Right now, I'm happy here with you, with our team. The Blue Oyster is my home, and I have no intention of leaving it. I nodded, but the thought Elliot had planted in my mind wouldn't leave me. What will really happen to the restaurant in a few years? I'm 64 now, and although I'm still full of vigor, I'll have to think about succession at some point. Noah has never been interested in the restaurant business. Caleb is too young. Elliot's a different story. He lives this restaurant. He puts his heart and soul into it. Maybe, but I decided to keep those thoughts to myself, at least for now. The next week passed in a strange state of limbo. Noah called every day, but our conversations were short and awkward. Paige tried to take me out to lunch twice, but I found excuses to decline. Caleb sent me a drawing in the mail, the blue oyster in his mind, with a giant blue oyster on the roof. It was the only thing that made me genuinely smile all week. On Friday, Paige showed up at their restaurant unexpectedly. She was dressed in a business suit. Apparently, she'd come straight from work. Rebecca escorted her into my office where I was, doing paperwork. Paige, I stood up, surprised to see her. "What brings you here?" "I wanted to talk." She sat down in the chair across from my desk. "You've been avoiding me, Ethan, not answering your phone, refusing invitations." "I've been busy," I answered, evasively. "That's not true," she looked at me defiantly. "You're mad at me, and that's why you've been avoiding me." I sighed. Paige had never been known for her tact. "Kay," I said, "I really don't feel like socializing after what happened at the restaurant, after everything you said." "I apologized," she exclaimed. "What else am I supposed to do? It's not about apologizing." "Paige," I looked her straight in the eye, "it's about sincerity. You're apologizing not because you're truly sorry for what you said, but because it turns out I'm richer than you thought." Her face flared up. "That's not fair. I admit that I was harsh but abrupt." I raised an eyebrow. "You called me a beggar, a loser, a man who should know his place, and that was just the other night. Before that, there were years of neglect, ridicule, trying to alienate my son and grandson from me. I never tried to distance Noah from you. She was outraged." "That's paranoia, isn't it?" I smiled without amusement. Who told him that visiting his father was a waste of time? Who convinced him that there was no point in taking the old man on vacation? Who kept finding reasons why Caleb couldn't spend the weekend with his grandfather? Paige opened her mouth but immediately closed it. She couldn't deny it. It was all true. "Okay," she said finally. "Maybe I wasn't not the best daughter-in-law, but understand me. I wanted what was best for our family. I wanted Noah to look forward, not dwell on the past. I wanted Caleb to hang out with successful, progressive people." Not she paused, but I finished for her. "Not with an old loser who could barely make ends meet." Paige lowered her eyes. "I didn't know you were a successful businessman. If you had told me, if I'd told you, you would have treated me differently." I nodded. "That's why I kept quiet. I wanted to be respected for who I am, not for my bank account. But isn't your business part of who you are?" Sheast. "Isn't it an accomplishment you should be proud of?" That question caught me off guard. There was some truth to it. "Maybe you're right," I admitted. "Maybe I've been hiding that part of my life for nothing. But that doesn't excuse the way you treat me. Regardless of my financial situation, I deserved respect, at least as your husband's father and your son's grandfather." Paige remained silent, staring at the floor. When she looked up, tears glistened in her eyes. "I don't know what to say, Ethan. I was wrong. That's obvious. But I can't change the past. I can only try to fix the future." I stared at her and couldn't tell if she was sincere or just another manipulation. Paige was always a master at making the right impression when it suited her interests. "What are you suggesting?" he finally asked. "A fresh start," she said. "Forget past hurts. Build a new relationship, honest, open, respectful." "And you think that's possible after Alice said and done?" She shrugged. "I don't. But isn't it worth a try for Noah? For Caleb?" I stared at her for a long time, trying to see the real Paige behind the mask of remorse. I couldn't decide whether to believe her or not. "I'll think about it," I finally said, "but I can't promise anything." She nodded and stood up. "That's all I ask. Thank you for listening." When she left, I leaned back in my chair, feeling drained. This conversation had taken more energy out of me than a whole day's work. An hour later, Elliot stopped by. "I saw your sister-in-law leaving," he said. "Is everything okay?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "She's suggesting a clean slate to forget all the wrongs and build a new relationship." "And you believe that?" Elliot looked at me skeptically. I'm not sure. I rubbed the bridge of my nose. But for Noah's sake, for Caleb's sake, maybe it's worth a try. Elliot sat down on the edge of the table. You know, Ethan, people change. I'm an example of that myself, but change has to be genuine. It has to come from within and not be a reaction to external circumstances. I nodded. Elliot, as always, got to the heart of the matter. I'm afraid that once the shock of my exposure wears off, she'll go back to her old attitude, I said. She'll just be better at hiding it. Maybe, Elliot agreed. Or maybe this will actually be a lesson to her. Who knows? He paused for a moment, then added, either way, it's up to you. But remember, you don't have to put up with people who don't respect you, even if they are family. I smiled. Over the years, Elliot had grown closer to me than many relatives. Maybe that's what real family was all about. Mutual respect, support, understanding, not blood ties or official statuses. By the way, Elliot said, changing the subject, I've invented a new dish, fillet turbot, with champagne and truffle sauce. Would you like to try it? Sure, I gratefully accepted the distraction. Bring it to the kitchen, chef. It's been 3 months since that memorable dinner. Things with my family hadn't gotten better, despite Paige's best efforts to feign remorse. Her sudden kindness quickly faded as soon as she realized I wasn't going to hand out money left and right. At first, there were hints about how great it would be to move to the West End, how Caleb needed a good tutor, how Noah dreamed of starting his own architecture firm. When I didn't respond, the hints turned to direct requests. And when I politely declined, Paige returned to her usual cold tone, only now it was also resentful. Noah was floundering between us, not knowing which side to take. I could see how hard it was for him to be torn between his wife and his father, and I tried not to make it worse. We met once a week for lunch, sometimes with Caleb, sometimes without. We talked about work, the weather, sports, everything but the main thing. We became even closer with Caleb. He often came to the restaurant after school, sat in the kitchen, watching Elliot work, asking endless questions about dishes, ingredients, culinary techniques. Elliot, to my surprise, showed unexpected patience and even began teaching the boy the basics of cooking. One day, as I watched them cooking pasta together, I caught myself thinking that I could see the future in this picture, a future in which I would no longer exist. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen to the restaurant when I was gone. That evening, I was sitting in my office going over the financial reports when Elliot stopped by. "May I?" he asked, standing in the doorway. "Sure," I set the papers aside. "Come on in." Elliot sat down across from me, looking unusually serious. "Ethan, I wanted to talk to you about the future. I'm listening. I got an offer," he said, looking me in the eye. "From Mercedes House, a chef position with complete freedom to create the menu." Mercedes House was a new luxury restaurant that had opened in the next town over. I'd heard about it. Huge investment, ambitious plans, aiming for Michelin stars. "It's a great offer," I said, trying to hide my disappointment. "You certainly deserve this opportunity." "I haven't given you an answer yet." Elliot kept looking at me. "I wanted to talk to you first." "Why?" I shrugged. "It's your career, your decision. Because the Blue Oyster isn't just a place of employment for me." He stepped forward. "It's home, family, and you're not just a boss, Ethan. You're the man who saved my life." I felt a lump come up in my throat. "Don't exaggerate," I tried. "To joke. I just gave you a job." "No." Elliot shook his head. "You gave me so much more than that. You gave me back my faith in myself, that I was worth something, that I could create, not just destroy." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "So, I want you to know that if you ask me to stay, I'll stay." Despite all the prospects of Mercedes House, I was touched by his words, but I couldn't let personal feelings influence professional decisions. "Elliot," I said softly, "I can't ask you to turn down this opportunity. You deserve a chance to develop, to grow, to maybe get that Michelin star every chef dreams of." But he looked at me carefully. I can hear but in your voice. I smiled. Over the years, he had learned to read me like an open book. But I have an alternative suggestion, I said, making a decision that had been maturing in me for weeks. What? If instead of being a chef in someone else's restaurant, you owned your own? Elliot frowned incomprehensively. What are you talking about? I want to sell you the Blue Oyster, I said simply. He stared at me in utter amazement. What? But why? Are you retiring? Are you sick? Did something happen? Nothing terrible has happened? I shook my head. I just feel like it's time for a change. I'm 64, Elliot. I'm not getting any younger, and lately I've been thinking more and more about seeing the world while I still have my strength and health. But the restaurant? He looked shocked. It's your life's work. You created it with Teresa. You put your heart into it. That's why I want it in good hands. I smiled. Your hands? Elliot, you love the Blue Oyster as much as I do. You know, every corner, every vendor, every regular customer. You're the heart of this restaurant. And now you can be the head. Elliot was silent, digesting my words. Then he shook his head. But I can't afford it, Ethan. You know my financial situation. I have some savings, but they're enough for a down payment on an apartment, let alone a whole restaurant. I'm offering an installment plan, I said. 10 years with a minimum down payment and a reasonable interest rate. You'll pay it off gradually, out of the restaurant's profits. But that's too generous. Elliot looked stunned. Why don't you just sell the restaurant to a chain or an investor? You'd get all the money at once and probably more than I can pay, because money isn't the point. I shrugged. The main thing is to keep the blue clam alive, to keep its spirit, its atmosphere, its quality. And this is possible only if the restaurant is managed by a man who truly loves it. Elliot was silent for a long time, staring into the space in front of him. I could see different emotions in his eyes. Disbelief, hope, fear, determination. Are you serious? He finally asked. Are you really ready to sell me the restaurant? Absolutely serious, I nodded. Think about it. Don't answer right away. Weigh the pros and cons. It's a big decision. What about your family? He asked. Your son, your grandson, don't you want to leave the business to them? I shook my head. Noah was never interested in the restaurant business. He's an architect, likes to build buildings, not businesses. And Caleb's too young. Who knows what he'll want to do when he grows up? What if he wants to follow in your footsteps? Elliot insisted. Become a restaurator, then you can be to him what I've been to you. I smiled. A mentor, a teacher, a man who would give him a chance. Elliot took a deep breath. I need to think, he said. Finally, this is too sudden. Sure, I nodded. Take as much time as you need. When he left, I leaned back in my chair, feeling strangely relieved. The decision that had seemed so difficult was suddenly obvious and right. The Blue Oyster should belong to Elliot, the man who loves it as much as I do, and it was time for me to move on. Elliot gave his answer 3 days later. He walked into my office after the restaurant closed when the staff had already dispersed. I'm in, he said without preamble. I want to buy the Blue Oyster. I smiled and extended my hand to him. Congratulations, future owner. We shook hands, sealing our agreement. Then we opened a bottle of good whiskey and discussed the details of the deal, the price, the installment terms, the transition period. We decided that I would stay on as a consultant for the first year, helping Elliot settle into his new role. It made sense, for the restaurant and for both of us. What are you going to do next? Elliot asked when we were done with the business part. Are you going to leave New Brethren? Yes, I nodded. I'm thinking about moving to the islands, maybe the Caribbean or Polynesia. I've always wanted to live by the ocean. Will you miss the restaurant? Sure. I smiled with a slight sadness. The blue oyster is a part of me, but you know, in life, sometimes you have to let go of what you love in order to move on. Elliot nodded understandingly. What about your family, Noah, Caleb? Caleb and I will keep in touch, I said. Modern technology allows us to communicate from a distance. Plus, I'm setting up a trust fund for him. A small amount of money for his education that he'll get when he's an adult. And Noah and Paige, I sigh. I don't think my leaving will upset Paige too much. As for Noah, he's going to have to figure out his own life. I can't do that for him. The next few weeks were spent preparing the paperwork to sell the restaurant and planning my departure. I found a cozy villa on Santa Lucia, Asmal Island in the Caribbean off the tourist trail. It had everything I dreamed of. Warm sea, calm atmosphere, beautiful nature, and enough infrastructure to not feel disconnected from civilization. I was in no hurry to inform my family about my plans. First, I wanted to make sure that all the paperwork was in order, that the deal with Elliot was done correctly, that the trust fund for Caleb was safe from Paige's encroachment. When all the formalities were settled, I invited Noah to lunch. Met at a small cafe, not the Blue Oyster, for a more personal conversation. "You look good," Noah said us. We sat down at a table. "Some kind of refreshed. I feel the same way," Ismi led. "I've made some big decisions and now it's like a stone has fallen from my soul." "What kind of decisions?" Noah tensed, as if expecting bad news. "I'm selling the restaurant," I said bluntly, "to Elliot. He'll pay me the price in installments over 10 years. Noah looked stunned. "But why? The restaurant's thriving. You're in good shape. Why sell?" "Because it's time for a change." I shrugged. "I'm 64, Noah. You still have the strength and health to live, for myself, to see the world. And the Blue Oyster will be in good hands. Elliot loves her as much as I do." Noah nodded slowly, digesting the information. "What are you going to do? Stay in New Brethren?" "No." I shook my head. "I bought a house on St. Lucia. I'm leaving in 2 weeks. The Caribbean?" Noah looked shocked. "For good?" "Yes." I nodded. It was time to start a new chapter in my life. Noah was silent, staring at his cup of coffee. I could see his face shift between emotions, surprise, confusion, maybe even resentment. "Was it because of us?" he finally asked. "Because of what happened to Paige?" "Partly," I admitted. "But more than that, I just realized that I was holding on to the past, to the routine, to the way things used to be. And there are so many places I haven't seen, so many things I haven't tried. What about us? What about Caleb?" I could hear the hurt in Noah's voice. "Are you just abandoning us?" "I'm not," I said softly. "We'll communicate via video link. You and Caleb can come visit me on vacations, and I've set up a trust fund for Caleb's education. He'll have access to it when he's of age." "What about Paige and me?" Noah asked bluntly. "You didn't include us in your will?" I looked at my son sadly. Was that really the most important thing to him? "No, Noah," I said honestly. "I put most of the money from the restaurant sale into my new home and investments that will keep me comfortable. Some of it will go into Caleb's trust fund. The rest I plan to spend on traveling, on new experiences, the life I'd been putting off for so long." Noah looked disappointed, though he tried to hide it. "I understand," he said after a pause. "It's your money, and you have the right to use it however you want. It's not about money, Noah." I leaned across the table toward him. "It's about relationships. It's about how we treat each other. I've always wanted you to love me for who I am, not what I have. That's why I've been hiding my success all these years." "What was the point of that?" he asked bitterly. "What did it accomplish other than hurt? Feelings and misunderstandings? The truth," I simply answered. "It showed me who really valued me as a person and who saw me only as a purse." Noah blushed, realizing I was referring to Paige. "She's not like that. he said without much conviction. She's just practical. Thinks about the future. Noah, I looked him straight in the eye. I don't want to interfere with your family life, but as a father who loves his son, I need to tell you something before I leave. He tensed, but nodded. I'm listening. Your relationship with Paige. It's unhealthy, I said softly. She controls you, manipulates you, makes you choose between her and everyone else, me, your friends, your hobbies. She's jealous of you, even of Caleb. I've seen how angry she gets when you spend time with your son instead of her. Noah opened his mouth to object, but I continued. I know you love her and that Caleb is the most important thing in your life. But think about it. Are you happy? Is this really the life you dreamed of? Noah was silent for a long time, staring into his cup. When he looked up, tears were glistening in his eyes. I know, he said quietly. I just don't know what to do. That's for you to decide. I put my hand on his shoulder. I'm not saying you should get a divorce or anything like that. Maybe Koo's therapy will help. Maybe a frank conversation. Maybe Paige will change on her own if she realizes she might lose you. I don't know. But I do know that you deserve to be happy. We talked for a long time. For the first time in years, really talked openly and honestly about his relationship with Paige, his career, his dreams, his fears, about Caleb, and what a wonderful person he's growing up to be. About my plans for the future. About the house on St. Lucia. About the traveling I wanted to do. When we said goodbye, Noah hugged me tighter than he'd ever hugged me before. I'm going to miss you, Dad, he said, and I could hear the genuine sadness in his voice. Me too, son, I patted him on the back, but we're not saying goodbye forever. You can always come visit me and I'll keep coming here, if only to check on Elliot's progress with their restaurant. Noah smiled through his tears. Promise? I promise? I nodded. And I also promise that I'll always be there for you if you need my advice or help. Despite the distance, the last 2 weeks before I left flew by in a flurry of packing and goodbyes. I sold the house, packed up my most valuable possessions to be shipped to Santa Lucia, gave away the rest, some to restaurant staff, some to charitable organizations. I gave the old Toyota to a young assistant chef who'd recently gotten his license. Paige, when she heard about my plans from Noah, was furious at first, especially because I hadn't left them any money in my will. Then, apparently, she decided to change tactics and began to feign grief over the impending separation. I politely accepted her fake regrets, but kept my distance. Caleb was the hardest to say goodbye to. He cried as he hugged me tightly and promised he would call me every day. I gave him a new tablet with a built-in SIM card so he could contact me anytime, regardless of his parents. Paige didn't like it, but she didn't dare object, not when she was still hoping I'd change my mind about the will. Finally, the day of departure came. I arrived at the Blue Oyster early in the morning when the restaurant was still closed. I walked through the empty room, remembering everything that had happened here in 15 years. The first customers, the first good reviews, the first profitable months. Teresa dancing happily between tables when we finally paid off the loan. Elliot tentatively entering the kitchen on his first day on the job. Caleb excitedly watching his favorite pasta being made. So many memories, so many emotions. But I felt no sadness, just gratitude for everything that had happened and a quiet confidence that everything was going the way it should. Elliot found me in the hall. He was already holding himself like a master, confident, dignified, but not arrogant. Ready for your new life? He asked, coming toward me. More than ready, I smiled. Are you ready for a new responsibility? Thanks. To you? Yes. He put his hand on my shoulder. You've taught me a lot, Ethan. Not only in cooking, but also in life. Likewise, my friend, I shook his hand. Take care of the Blue Oyster. It's special, I promise. He nodded. And I look forward to your Visit at least once a year to see how I'm doing." "I will," I laughed. "I'm sure you'll do a great job, though." We hugged goodbye, and I walked out of the restaurant without looking back. A new life was ahead of me, full of unknowns, but also full of possibilities. It was a long flight with a layover in Miami. I looked out the window at the clouds below and thought about how dramatically my life had changed in the last few months. I had gone from being a restaurant owner living a double life to a free man ready for new adventures. As the plane went to land, I saw Santa Lucia, an emerald green island surrounded by the turquoise waters of the Caribbean Sea. My new home, my new beginning. The cab driver who picked me up at the airport turned out to be a cheerful local named Joseph. All the way to the villa, he talked about the island, the local customs, the best beaches and restaurants. I listened with genuine interest. It was my first lesson in my new life. The villa turned out to be even better than in the photos. Spacious, bright, overlooking the ocean, large terrace, swimming pool, garden with tropical plants. It had everything could have dreamed of and more. After paying the cab driver, I was alone. I went out on the terrace, breathed in the salty sea air, looked at the sunset over the ocean, and for the first time in a long time, I felt absolute calmness and confidence that everything would be fine. I didn't know what was ahead of me. Maybe new acquaintances, maybe new hobbies, maybe even a new love. Who knows? But one thing I did know was that I would no longer live in the past. No more clinging to resentments, to fears, to unfulfilled hopes. Life is too short to waste on regrets, and too beautiful not to savor every moment of it. The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon, coloring the sky and the sea in golden and pink tones. I raised the glass of local rum I had bought at the airport. "To new beginnings," I said aloud, saluting the sunset, "and to the freedom to be myself."